Nostalgia is the biggest drug, they say. And I have two gentlemen here with me who are hell bent on injecting a strong dose in each of us. But before we get into the details, let me introduce them and welcome them. They are both masters of their own domains. Let me start with the very respected Amit Syngle, CEO and MD of Asian Paints Limited, and Piyush Pandey, creative genius and veteran ad maker. Thank you for joining us on Head Turners by Impact and E4M.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
Let's start with Har Ghar Kuch Kehta Hai, which you've decided to bring back after 22 years. Now, I've been chasing, tracking your journey, Asian Paints ads over the years, and each of them have been very, very memorable and spectacular in their own way. Why did you then decide to bring back this one ad after so many years?
So what we see is that there are some things which are iconic, some things which always are ageless and timeless. This is one part of a journey which is something which really turned the tables for us and something which really projected us in the area of homes very strongly. And when we kind of really got into this way back in 2001, I think we realized that homes was that part of the journey which was becoming so important as part of our own lives. And it was moving away from just the celebration around festivals in terms of what we used to appropriate very strongly. And the whole area of the high voltage emotion which people were putting in homemaking was something which was very, very big. And I think that's the time when this idea generated in terms of saying that Asian Paints and homes are really connected, and how do we kind of really bring this idea to life to that extent. And therefore, I would say that at that point of time, it was the creative genius of Piyush that when we just floated the idea of home, okay, is where he came up with this whole iconic idea in terms of the Har Ghar, how it kind of really came to life. And today we see that while we have done so much of innovative stuff in terms of really looking at so many prepositions and so many other areas in terms of what we brought in, we thought this is something which is really ageless. This is something which has always stayed with people and it is so true in today's world as well. And therefore, we felt the relevance of it kind of really made us think in terms of really bringing it back to its life.
Very true. I want to ask you, Mr. Pandey. Now, in the past few years, we've seen so many brands kind of changing their philosophy, changing their look and feel to kind of keep up with the changing time. And to your credit, you've created this tagline which has defied time and, which Asian Paints has decided to keep for 22 years and I'm sure for many more years ahead. How did that really come about? What is the big story behind how you created
See, there are moments, to be very honest, there are moments of magic that happen. And they happen not just like that. There is an environment in which you are working and the magic happens in the context. We were working on this thing of saying the home is an extension of your personality. And there's another partner of ours, Madhukar Sabnabesi, who was working with us as a planner. We used to get together, and in that environment, one magic moment came to me and I started writing. With no strategy in front of me, nothing in front of me. I wrote something without changing a single alphabet. And I called up Amit and his boss that time, KBS Anand, and I said, "What are you doing in your office?" They are working, what else? I said, "Drop it right now, get into your car and come to my office." They said, I said, "Come." And we have a relationship of the kind where say, okay, must be meaningful.
Yeah.
And it was daytime, so it was nothing other meaningful. So, so they drove in, and when they came in, I just read out what I had written. Same as what the ad is. And all three of us hugged each other. We had moist eyes because we knew that we were sitting on something which was here for everyone around, wherever you are in the world. And so I would say, to answer your question, yes, the magic moment came from God. The context we had built on. The acceptance was absolutely spontaneous by Amit and KBS. And here we are sitting 22 years later and saying it's young and fresh enough to be rerun.
Absolutely. I was trying to trace back your journey with Asian Paints and, as Mr. Pandey just said, you were heading marketing at that time. So when he came up, when he gave you that call, he made that call and he told you that, please come, let's hear this out. What was your thought? Do you really, there's one thing to like the campaign and the idea, and one thing to actually feel that this is going to last for years and years. Did that thought strike you that this is evergreen?
So first of all, when Piyush gave the call, we were thought it was for some other purpose in terms of, and not possibly only for listening to what he has written. And we actually, I think, said that, if Piyush is saying it's important, we might as well kind of go and listen to him in terms of what he's saying. And I can only tell you that, see, while we had done all the work around saying that home is an important entity and we need to kind of get into that extent, I think the way he recited it, we actually told Piyush saying, we are just loving what you have written. And I remember that, he told us this 2 or 3 times, and every time he told us, we could see our hair standing and we could kind of really feel it in terms of what this magic was kind of building up. And, as he rightly said, at that point of time, it was these words where the Har Ghar was born, literally. So he wrote it as, something which was the copy in terms of what he was saying as a voiceover to that extent. But the way the entire thing folded, it started and ended with Har Ghar. Okay, and that became the corporate positioning for us in terms of going forward so well to that extent. And there are, see, these moments of magic, as he rightly said, because what came out was something which was really touching our hearts immediately. It was not something which was contrived. It was not something which was imposed. It was something which was natural. And we felt very strongly that it cuts across segmentation. It cuts across various profiles to that extent. And I think we just loved the idea and we said, we are onto it, and let's kind of really see in terms of how we can bring this magic on.
This
You
is
know, let me interrupt you here because I'll complete what Amit said. None of us realized that this could be a business philosophy, as he rightly said. And one day I remember he called me up and said, Piyush, it seems like a business plan. I'm getting into kitchens, I'm getting into Har Ghar.
Yeah.
Abhi bahut kuch कहने वाला hai. So it fit into that.
Absolutely.
But honest thing is, at that point of time, did we see it that way? No. When it came, when it opened up, then possibilities were seen by them, and we moved forward.
At that point of time, we discussed, are we really ahead of the time, really, in terms of appropriating home decor, in this way? Because if you see, the ad was more purist. It was not about just showing painting. It was not showing about just walls to that extent. It was showing the home in its pure form. And I think the beauty of the ad lied in the fact that it was about the whole emotions of homemaking.
मैं एक मिनट इंटरप्ट करूंगा उसमें एक लाइन है which I really love which is not about paints at all कहते हैं इस फर्श पे नंगे पैर किसके बच्चे चलते they were not making फर्श it was nothing said about paint so it was the हर घर कुछ कहता है doesn't have to say paint all the time sorry I'm
and that's what I was trying to employ. It really became, it gave us literally a fresh lease into really defining the strategy going forward. And that's how today we see that how we have evolved in terms of really the whole area of just not about the share of surface, but the share of space within the homes. So I think what started as the purity about the home has really evolved into something which is now really very, very true about in terms of the space we play with.
Very interesting. It's one of those intuition over data research ideas,
No,
right?
don't
Which
even
kind
talk
of
about it. If you talk about it, I'll forget what the intuition was.
Then that's the beauty which I think Piyush brings. I think it's really the gut, the feel, the pulse. I think that's brilliant. Okay, and some of these things which come in with those measures, I don't think so any research or strategy can bring.
very true. Another thing we've noticed is off late we've seen a lot of nostalgia-based ads or products kind of coming back. One was your ad, Kuch Khas Hai, which made a grand comeback recently. Then we have products like Parle's Rola Cola, Campa Cola. Some of them have, of course, got well received by the audience again, and some of them not so much. So now that you're bringing back the same ad without any change actually, after 22 years, we're seeing this big generation change that has happened in between. How do you think it's going to appeal to the younger people? Just like,
Some younger people in our teams had this question. So Amit had a solution to that. So I'll let Amit talk about it. How did you solve that problem of the younger people? Some of them are in the room also.
So see, one of the reaction was that some of the people who when they voiced out saying that what is the relevance to the younger generation in terms of what is there, and I just called up Piyush and said that Piyush, there are some people who are just voicing this kind of a zone, and we've always considered, and especially Piyush has always been the brand custodian in terms of really owning up the thing, and he said, "Boss, this is an emotion. This is something which is universal. It's not something which today, from generation to generation, can change. It's an emotion in terms of what is the larger thing which we are appropriating to that extent. So, whether it is the Gen Z or the millennial or whatever we kind of see, the emotion remains the same of home showcasing the personality of the people who stay within the home to that extent. It's just that their expression might be very different in terms of what they would like to bring onto the table. And today, I think if you look at the genesis of this, you are showing different generations in this ad, right from the old grandmother to a younger child to the home, the housewife to that extent, and you're showing various generations how they are appropriating in their own way in terms of what they like about the home. And the whole concept is so beautifully weaved in, because today what we are saying is that every home is about the personality in terms of what you have, and it brings the life that, and Asian Paints is helping us just getting that closer to that emotion. So I strongly think, and that's what he always proposes, that anyone who's talking about this emotion not being pure is something which is called just saying crap. It just doesn't work literally,
थोड़ा
and
सिंपल
it's
है
so
ना,
true.
थोड़ा सिंपल है कि वी आर सेइंग हर घर चुपचाप से कहता है कि अंदर उसमें कौन रहता है ना, कौन कुड बी जेंजी, कौन कुड बी
Very
यू,
true.
कौन कुड बी somebody older like me, कौन कुड बी, हर आदमी हो सकता है.
Very true.
उसके बाद में nobody is trying to teach you कि इसको ऐसे करना. Let them be.
True.
And I'll have products enough so that I will fit into their needs and desires at
Absolutely.
any point of time.
Absolutely.
True. And I think it also goes with your philosophy. I remember talking to your team when you released the Mondelez Kuch Khas Hai ad, but you said you should not touch a masterpiece. If you're
Yeah.
remaking it, you either come up with a plan on why it should be relevant, and if it's already relevant, don't touch it. I think that goes perfectly with.
Absolutely.
And that's the
Yes.
philosophy we are taking here also. There is, when you have literally his master's voice in that, so why do you want to have to touch it?
Right.
The only thing we have changed is that from 2002 to now, our logo has changed. So we just changed the logo, but we have not added anything. We have done nothing at all.
The essence is the same.
Yeah, essentially.
Right. Another thing that hasn't changed since then is that you were market leaders then and you are market leaders now, Asian Paints overall. But of course, you've added new categories. You are into home decor, innovation. I mean, there are a lot of things that have happened over time. Tell me, what is really the reason why you have managed to retain that number one spot in a category which has had many players today? Is it innovation? Is it the fact that you have a product for all kinds of people, affordable, luxury, everything? Or is it your distribution network?
It is, I would say, none of these. It's the consumer. So long as you own the emotion around the consumer, and you can say that you are that preferred brand in terms of which the consumer says that I am with this brand, I really associate with this brand. I think that's something which really separates. And I think what we've done over the last, 2 to 3 decades is we kept that emotion alive. And there is where I think which differentiates our brand so strongly, that you always work to the core in terms of appealing to the consumer what really matters to the consumer. So when the consumer is saying, hey, I'm looking at something different which comes to my house, which gives it a new feel, but it still reflects my personality. So if you see, the thought is still the same, and I think that is what possibly I say that the core value of Asian Paints has always remained the same, which is bringing joy and happiness to people's lives. And I think we've been really strongly working on that paradigm. All the other things are just things which are propelling that thought. So whether it is innovation in terms of newer products, or it is our getting into now the home decor category in terms of really embracing the whole area of the share of space, or it is the distribution strength in terms of which basically makes the consumer get that product at such a short notice from your neighborhood to that extent. I think the genesis all kind of gives it that you've got your ear to what the consumer wants, and you are still live to the emotion of the consumer saying, here is a brand who knows what you want and what is the emotion you appropriate, and that is something which we stand for.
Super. So your emotional goals are something that you're living with.
Absolutely.
What is your financial goal? And now you're leaders in India. Do you want to be leaders globally? And is there a timeline that you've defined for yourself?
See, as we see it, if you look at the journey 4 years back, we were closer to about something like 19,000 crores. And now I think in 4 years, we've touched about 36,000 crores in terms of we've doubled the turnover. And what we are very proud of ourselves is that you are making yourself more and more relevant. Okay. And we are part of the home decor life cycle of the customer. Okay. And I always keep on repeating this, that right from the first renting out of the space to the first ownership to the first renovation to the second home to the kids home, you're talking of saying that I'm completing the full life cycle and still say relevant in that entire life cycle of the brand very, very strongly. And that is something which we have been appropriating very strongly. And therefore you see this whole thing of the diversification into home decor in terms of what we are bringing. And this is something which we are now trying to take forward in terms of looking at some of the spaces even outside India in terms of what we are kind of working. Now today we are talking of opening a store in Dubai in terms of from a point of view of home decor, what we want to kind of do. So I think our entire aim is that if you keep on living in this space, that you are kind of committed to bringing joy and happiness in people's lives across. That is an aim we would like to prophesize. Today, we are amongst the top 5 players globally to that extent. We are the company which possibly talks of the second most expensive brand in terms of from a market cap point of view at a global level. So I think some of those aims stay in terms of where it is. But what really matters is that are you really progressing and taking the consumer ahead? Are you really getting more entrenched in terms of their lives as you kind of go ahead? And therefore, I think geographies don't matter really to that extent. What really matters is that are you sitting at the core of this proposition and propagating yourself as you kind of move ahead?
Super. And another thing that hasn't changed is your partnership with Ogilvy and Piyush. Very candid answer expected from you. Is it because of the brand Piyush Pandey or is it Ogilvy? That
So
the partnership
can I
has
answer
to.
that? I want to answer that.
Sure.
See, this relationship goes back to 1984.
That's right.
And I joined Ogilvy in 1982. So I was a nobody. He joined Asian Paints in 1990. In 1990, he was a nobody. Relationship had been going on. I came into work on the creative side of it only around the late 80s, early 90s. So the relationship belongs to companies. Individuals strengthened it from time to time, and there are so many people on both sides that we know stood for the same values, took it forward, somebody took it more forward, and now he's taking it even further. So I can say on his behalf also that today he is at the helm. I was at the helm for a long time. But are we the people who are, can we say, I am Asian Paints? No. I think he can say, yes, I am an important player of the team Asian Paints. And same I can say for Ogilvy.
Yeah, and just to add to what Piyush says, I think what personalities do is they only sparkle the relationship.
Correct.
Okay, the relationship continues to that extent, and therefore I think one of the important facets of people like Piyush and what I try to bring is that it is our duty that we kind of really keep this relationship live and kind of really going by the work which we are doing today across, because I think it is physically impossible that Piyush would kind of really come into everything in terms of what we are doing to that extent. So I think it's the full body of work which really matters. But and there are some individuals who are just kind of propelling that relationship and kind of giving it a new direction in terms of where you can take it.
Just to be the devil's advocate here, I want to understand, we are hearing of so many pitches happening where brands are trying to find out which are the best suited agencies for them. And relationships like these seem very, very rare. So would you say 5 or 10 years from now, such decade-long relationships are going to become a thing of nostalgia where, you are maybe sitting with your young guns and saying, "Hamare zamane mein, brands used to trust agencies."
Or can I turn it around completely? 5 years from now, these people will be pulling their hair out and saying, क्या क्या बकवास किया था, चलो कुछ long lasting relationships बनाते हैं.
Or also, and I always feel that, brands who are not clear about their own strategies, they think of getting the strategies from a new pitch.
Correct.
Okay. I think brands on a overall thing, we need to be clear in terms of what you're pursuing, because the strategies and ideas are coming from a coexistence of both. It can't be that you are hunting for new ideas through new pitches. So one has to be very clear in terms of why you are looking for a new pitch, a new agency, in terms of what you're bringing onto the table. I strongly feel that today, if your relationship is strong, okay, your work will reflect in terms of that, to that extent. Okay, but you can't hunt for newer strategies by just doing a new pitch.
So beautifully put. It's almost like saying a known person not cracking a problem. I can sit with that person and say,
Absolutely.
let's crack the problem. Rather than saying, अच्छा कोई है जो crack करेगा. So I think the value of relationships, whether it's in our personal lives or at work, I think it's the same principle applies.
Fabulous. And may this relationship continue. Now, another thing I want to ask you, yes. Another thing I want to ask you is, you are, we discussed home decor. That wasn't a very big category a few years ago. Today, how much does it contribute to your overall revenue?
So I think we are still fairly young in terms of what we are pursuing, because today it contributes to about 4% of our decorative turnover, to that extent. Our aim is to kind of take it to about 8 to 10% of our overall business as we see. It's a category which is like a fashion industry. It's not something which is that you do something and then you can just sit back and relax and see in terms of what is going to happen. It's about what is the new trend, what is the new area which you are bringing in terms of that decor which you want to kind of push. It's also about really becoming an integrated home decor player. It's not about just embracing one or two categories. And typically what we've seen in India is that there are only one or two specialists of a brand who have come into an organized business. So whether it is the whole area of furnishings or whether it is the whole area of rugs or something, we have only specialized players which are there. What we are attempting is something which is very different. We are talking of everything within the home space. Now that is something which is fairly ambitious in terms of what we are taking, because I felt strongly that you can't talk of just categories. You have to speak about the space home, because that's what we are appropriating, and that is where Har Ghar stands so pure in terms of what we are bringing. And Piyush and I were discussing, saying that way back in 2002, we never imagined that we were talking of home decor at that point of time, where the couple was really talking of whether it was the furniture, whether it was the flooring, whether it was all those things which was coming, which has come live now in terms of this home decor initiative.
And the line that Piyush mentioned,
absolutely,
the floor line, I think that also fits beautifully with
Correct.
what you do
in
today.
fact, Amit said one day that we have just opened up as if it's a business plan. I think it's unfolding. I see it unfolding, as he said rightly. Some are new, some have already been established. So I think the game goes on.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of this home decor journey is that, as I said, I think it is complementary to the core business. Okay, it's not something which is a diversification, which is totally into an unrelated space to that extent. So we are very much within the home, and we know the home consumer so well in terms of how we are kind of going at. And therefore, we feel that this whole proposition of decor under one roof is what we are appropriating through various store formats which are coming. And now we are talking of opening one of the biggest stores in India in terms of what we want to do. It was something which we will unveil in Q3, which kind of comes up. And we are really saying that we really bring something which is very different in this industry. And that is why we are talking of the whole formats, like which we are talking of phygital stores. So it's married with technology. It is married with respect to how the home journey can be really kind of regulated, and something new which comes into the place. So the ambition is that you are talking about being a strong player in becoming an integrated home decor player, rather than just looking at embracing various categories.
Interesting. And one question I wanted to ask you is, we've seen Asian Paints with many brand ambassadors across different products, but we've never had this one big, the mother company's brand ambassador. Is there a reason why you chose not to have one for that? And second is, Over the years, which is that brand ambassador that, according to you, has made the most, sense, or has been the most popular, or is closest to what Asian Paints really stands
But
for?
Sunil Babu.
So I would say that, and that is something which we always discuss. See, no brand ambassador makes the brand, literally. Okay. I think what is very important is, like in our corporate campaign, we've not used anywhere a brand ambassador. It's the common man. It's the common belief. It's what really touches the consumer at the heart to that extent. Some of the brand ambassadors come in, they play a certain specific role in terms of really saying that you want a brand to kind of go into a level of sophistication. You want to go a brand in terms of a certain luxury space to that extent. So when we got Deepika, we had very clear that we wanted to push Royal from a space of royalty to a place of sophistication to that extent. And that's what basically, her demeanor, her personality in terms of what we used in terms of really getting into that space, which was something which we wanted real entrenchment to that extent. Similarly, when we used a Ranbir to that extent, Ranbir's role was more in terms of looking at appropriate a brand in a certain category to that extent and bring possibly a certain element in terms of what he brings because of his stature and so on and so forth. But I think the real successful campaigns have been more from the point of view of what we did. For example, the Mera Wala Blue. Okay, the Mera Wala Blue was a very simple ad. It did not have any brand personality, but it is something which is even remembered today. Okay, Sunil Babu in terms of what you just spoke of. Okay, everyone remembered Sunil Babu in terms of what essence come. So I would
I
say,
think what is,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
that not dependent on using brand celebrities. It is for a purpose. And that's the difference that I see between what is happening around us and what they have done is that naam ke vaste nahi. Is there a role that the person
Absolutely.
plays? And we talked about Royal. Royal, I was a part of the team that launched Royal. Nothing has changed. It was sophistication and royalty. It was Tiger Patodi, which was two in one.
The
And
hallmark,
move
yeah.
karke, today's expression of that is in the. I think the best thing they have done is that use the celebrity for a purpose to make it larger than life.
So you look at, for example, a recent example in terms of we took Virat Kohli for Neo Bharat. Okay, the very fact that we wanted to kind of say that Har Ghar Khelega, Har Ghar Khelega. The whole expression was something which we wanted a larger reach. Okay, it was also to catch larger eyeballs in terms of people really associating, and we felt that as a brand, when you are really kind of approaching every Indian to that extent, I think it really carried because today cricket is religion. And that is why we
Yeah.
thought that it is a good area to kind of appropriate and getting Virat to kind of really just have this messaging in terms of that you're reaching out to every Indian in a very strong way to that extent. So I think we have used various brand ambassadors over a period of time, but everyone with a purpose in terms of where we want to get up. But I would still say that our hero brand ambassador is still the common man.
Well said.
Very well said.
I have one last question for you, Piyush. Now, I remember Asian Paints used to have this series called Har Ghar Kuch Kehta Hai, where you would go to celeb homes and,
It was
ask
the
them.
most fantastic thing that they did
Yeah.
on their own.
Yeah.
And I have to salute
Okay.
that. In fact, a few days back when we met, I said it was so fantastic that it was so emotional. People got so emotional going back to their
Childhood
places
homes,
where they
yeah.
were grown up. I think suddenly the brand becomes larger than life. That you are able to touch people's lives. As he said, it is about people
Yeah.
and make sense to those who are interested in the lives of those people whose homes you are visiting.
Yeah, true.
You can carry on with the question. That's my one of the favorite things on Herar.
It's called Where the Heart Is.
Yeah.
Interesting. So my question to you is, we all know that you live in a beautiful villa in Goa. पीयूष पांडे जी का घर क्या कहता है?
तो घर का नाम मालूम है आपको? बिल्कुल सही कहता है. It's called the pavilion.
Cricket.
जब मैं थक जाता हूँ तो वहाँ बैठता हूँ. When I want to see the game, I go onto the balcony and see the game. When I want to relax, I relax there. And when I have to work, I go into the closet and do voiceovers for him.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for taking us down the memory lane. And I hope everyone, old or new, connects with this ad which you brought to life 22 years ago. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
We have
God
no
bless
doubt
you.
on that.